to order at 6. Conveyance to closed session.
Are there any comments
Oh, are there any comments
for closed
for
session?
closed session?
So convene the closed session.
Convenes to closed session. reconvene to open session. Pledge of allegiance.
Matter.
Pledge of allegiance.
Please stand. Salute, pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Closed session announcements. There's nothing to report. Approval of agenda for April 22, 2022. Do I have a first motion?
I shall move.
Do I have a second?
Tengo una segunda moción.
Second motion.
Cornell? Aye. Lawson?
Aye.
Oh, Mullen?
Aye.
Tapia?
Aye.
Permiso, aye. Statement from the board.
What is it?
To read a statement. Okay. Se requiere que la Junta Directiva del Distrito Escolar de Fairfax, según la política de la Junta, establecida una visión y dirección para nuestro distrito con un enfoque principal en el logro y la educación de los estudiantes. Nuestra comunidad y nuestros padres esperan esto de la Junta Escolar de Fairfax y siempre debemos satisfacer esta expectativa. Reconocemos que el informe del Gran Jurado del Condado de Kern y el informe del equipo de asistencia de gestión fiscal PICMAT ha identificado áreas de preocupación y posible violación de leyes, políticas y principios fiscales sólidos que nosotros como Junta estamos obligados a corregir y completar. Nos tomamos estas conclusiones y recomendaciones en serio y cooperaremos con todas las organizaciones relevantes para mejorar nuestra gobernanza del distrito escolar de Fairfax. Además, nos comprometemos con nuestra comunidad, nuestros padres, nuestros empleados y más que nada con nuestros estudiantes, que en esta junta se compromete a obedecer todas las leyes, políticas y procedimientos. Nos aseguraremos de que nuestro enfoque y esfuerzos principales sean sobre el aprendizaje y el apoyo de los estudiantes y no sobre agendas personales. Estamos con nuestros personal para servir a nuestros estudiantes y sus familias y aceptamos esa función. Gracias.
I'm going to do the English translation. Oops. I'll use my playground voice. That's okay. Fairfax School District Board of Trustees is required as per board policy to establish a vision and direction for our district with a primary focus on student achievement and learning. Our community and our parents expect this of the Fairfax School Board, and we must always meet this expectation. We acknowledge that the report of the Kern County Grand Jury and the report of the Fiscal Management Assistant Team, FICMAT, have identified areas of concern and possible violations of laws, policies, and sound fiscal principles that we, as a board, are obligated to correct and comply with. We take these findings and recommendations very seriously and will cooperate with all relevant organizations to improve our governance of the Fairfax School District. Moreover, we pledge to our community, our parents, our employees, and most of all, to our students, that this board is committed to obeying all laws, policies, and procedures. We will ensure that our primary focus and efforts to be about student learning and student support, and not about personal agendas. We stand with our staff to serve our students and their families, and we embrace that role. Thank you.
Public comments? Are there any public comments?
So if we can have Laura Smith come up to the podium. I'm sorry, Lisa. My apologies, my eyes were on Miss Brown there.
I'm sorry, Ms. Smith, your mic.
Okay, things went green. Yay. I haven't been able to see you guys for a long time. And so I'm really glad to be back here and be back in school and be back in the class and to see you all. I'm also really happy with the statement you just read. I haven't felt like that's been a priority with all this other nonsense that's been going on for a long time. I do want to let you know that as you prepare your response to KCSOS, as you know, the complaint with the DA is still being undertaken to see if there are criminal charges to be brought. And I spoke with Lieutenant Furnish and Mark Pafford, the attorney from the DA's office a couple days ago. They are actively reviewing the FCMAT report to see if that will happen. In addition, the state of California is involved, and I spoke with them a couple days ago. The complaint that I filed last February, not this February, but last February, has now been converted from a complaint to a case. The attorney is Jenna Reinhardt, and for the record, the case number is 2021-00508. Oh, how far back do you want me to go? I was just saying that the complaint with the state, the Fair Political Practices Commission, which investigates misuse of public funds for private purposes and election irregularities. That case, I've just been well enough to ask and have found out that the complaint is no longer a complaint, it is now a case. And it has been assigned to an attorney named Jenna Reinhardt. And I gave the case number, I can give it again if you need it. This is not going to go away because there's money missing from our students. And I'm saddened by that. But I'm also hopeful that through the district attorney's actions and the state of California's actions, we get that money back. Thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. Do you want this off?
Thank you. And I'm glad to see you back. Next, we have Cora Padilla.
Howdy. Good evening, Fairfax Board and Community. My name is Cora Padilla, and I will be commenting on Board Agenda Item 8.2, Declaration Vacancy of Board of Trustee Position by Palmer Mullen. With all this drama going on with the district, I cannot see how certain board members are still here. We have been featured in news so many times and still nothing has been done. Sorry. In the latest article by Jose Gaspar, he brings forth great questions and some information. To quote Mr. Gaspar, another finding is that Mullen, as board president, pushed the district to hire an outside law firm, Fagan, Friedman, and Fulfrost, to stop the release of a personally damaging investigation report. True, Mullen used his position as a bully pulpit to rush the matter through, and he got it thanks to his allies on the board, Alma Rios and Jose Tapia. Let's stop right there and review a key phrase, bully pulpit, meaning a public office or position of authority that provides its occupant with an outstanding opportunity to speak out. We can go back in numerous board meetings and see Mullen trying to cut people off while doing public comments. He was trying to use his power to control situations that were not going in his favor. Let's continue with the news article by Mr. Gaspar. So is Mullen criminally guilty of the claims made in the audit? What about Rios and Tapia? Were it not for them, Mullen would not have been able to do what he's accused of. Can they be accused of aiding and abetting? And in fact, the audit itself states that more concerning were behaviors and attitudes some board members, Rios and Tapia, who went along with Mullen's agenda, frequently interrupting, discouraging, or interfering with attempts by other board members to engage in meaningful discussion related to agenda items. Is this really how you two, Mr. Tapia and Ms. Rios, want to be viewed? To be the underling of Mullen's schemes? Do what's right and vote vacancy for Mullen's seat and position. Do what's right for our school. Thank you.
Don't have any more public comment.
I just would like to say the statement that was just made was not true in its entirety. Thank you.
Can the board be reminded that we are not to speak to towards public comment?
Staff for communication.
Okay, for us tonight, I have a runoff. There was two meetings ago, I brought forth the official delegation assembly runoff for Region 12B for Kern County. So we have the choice of 4 members to represent us for Region 12B. The first being Leah Ann Cook from Rosedale Union School District, Gilberto Lopez from Lamont, Jean Parks from Kernville, and Shannon Zimmerman from Bakersfield City. So we need to choose one.
I would like to nominate Shannon Zimmerman.
I would like to nominate number 1,
Leah Cook, okay.
Leah Cook.
Well, actually, I think we have to get,
Oh, so we have to do roll call for her? Okay.
yeah.
So
So we had Leah, Shannon Zimmerman was the one that trustee Cornell recommended.
Could you repeat again?
Sure. The first one was Leah Ann Cook from Rosedale Union, Gibraltar Lopez from Lamont, Jean Parks of Kernville, and Shannon Zimmerman from Bakersfield City.
So we're gonna do first, the one that Cornell asked.
We're
for,
going to vote on, since I made the
And
nomination,
then-
we're going to vote on that one first.
and then we're gonna vote in the one that
So actually, let's just go ahead and take a vote for Shannon Zimmerman so that we can move the agenda along.
do I have a first motion for?
You already have the first motion.
Oh,
It
do I
would have
have-
been nice to have had a biographical sketch online for us to have read.
yeah.
It was, we had done this a couple of months ago, and so this is all that CSBA sent us, so I apologize.
What
do
I
you
did was
know-
that I went and I looked up information on each and most of them have like, say, a Facebook and they're already, they're out there. So that's what I did. So
Were you able to actually meet any of them at CSBA or,
I did not attend
Around.
CSBA.
so you don't know them other than what you read online or on the computer?
I just basically on the research that I've done on them.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So do I have a second for the one that Cornell wants
Shannon Zimmerman.
for Shannon?
What was your motion?
She was first. And do we have a second?
Would you repeat her motion, please?
So what's on up for the agenda is to approve Shannon Zimmerman to represent Region 12B for Kern County for CSBA.
Which person was it?
Shannon Zimmerman.
Is that the one from Bakersfield City?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, roll call. Cornell,
Aye.
Mullen,
I'm gonna recuse myself from this vote.
Lawson,
Aye.
Tapia,
Aye.
okay?
You have to vote. This time it votes.
Oh,
Your vote.
no, okay.
So thank you. I will go ahead and put down Shannon Zimmerman for our vote.
Action items, pick my response.
Okay, Mr. Sims, if you can come up and join us, and Mr. Clark is going to put the document, we have a draft document, a response that the board had authorized me to initiate last board meeting. It is a draft. We will go through the recommendations, and Mr. Sims will help us with that discussion.
Good evening, members of the board, cabinet, members of the public. Trevin Sims, partner at Lozano Smith. I believe we also have hard copies for members of the public.
We do have hard copies with Christina. If you didn't pick one up with the agenda, and the board should have a copy, a hard copy in their packets.
Oh,
Trustee Lawson, it should be paper clipped. Okay, got it. Perfect. You should have a copy. Christina, I know we put one in your binder, but we can get you another copy. That's not a problem.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, okay, thank you. It should be
I
there.
have a FICMAT report part of it.
Okay, so by way of introduction of the item, recall that the county superintendent of schools sought an extraordinary audit by FICMAT. FICMAT's report was completed, I think was March 31st or something like that. And the superintendent of schools, based upon that report, provided recommendations to the board. And by statute, the board is required to respond to those recommendations in writing within 15 days. So this meeting was scheduled to provide an opportunity for the board to review a draft of a proposed response prepared between our office and the superintendent's office. That was the recommendation at the last meeting where the county superintendent of schools made the recommendations that we would bring back a proposed response. The statute does specifically state that it is the response of the board. The statute says the board responds to the recommendations of the superintendent of schools, not all of the findings provided in the FICMAT report. So when you review this draft, what you'll see under section 1 are the 3 recommendations, specific recommendations made by the superintendent of schools, and a draft response to each of those recommendations. In my view as counsel, that's the only aspect of the letter that's required by statute. But in working with the superintendent and feedback that the superintendent received. We've added another section that responds to the other recommendations made by the grand jury in the grand jury's report. So that's why the letter is divided up in that way. Section 1 is required. Section 2 was added essentially out of a request that the response be more transparent in the sense of addressing the other recommendations made by in the grand jury report. And then there's a conclusion section that also includes some items that are not required by statute in this response, but based upon feedback and interaction, were added to this letter for consideration by the board. But ultimately, the final letter is determined, the content of the final letter is determined by the board.
Do you mean board majority or entirety?
The board majority.
We did the grand jury point by point, and the board majority, am I correct, Victoria, voted most of the responses 3-2. And she and I were the dissenting votes on many of them. So I was kind of dismayed with the report that we made to the grand jury that it was not a consensus of all of us. And the dissenting part was never brought up. That's just my complaint.
And I agree. That's basically what the situation at hand is, where in regards to the report.
So I think what we have here is a opportunity as a board in its entirety. We're going to be able to discuss the response in public. We're going to be able to edit if necessary in public. So I think this is a great opportunity for the board to come together on the response in this letter.
So perhaps we take it sort of paragraph by paragraph, beginning with the first paragraph, which essentially just summarizes how we got to this point. And perhaps what the board can do is, if it has questions of council or the superintendent about that language, happy to address any questions or concerns, or obviously discussion among the board about whether the board is okay with that, whether the board desires particular changes, additions, or revisions.
So we need to read this right now, right?
Would it help if I gave Ms. Brown a job and had her read?
What's that?
Would it help if I had Ms. Brown read the section for it?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Ms. Brown is going to read it.
Do
Okay.
it. Okay.
Okay, wait, before we read it, Art, as you talk to us board members, we gave you a little bit of our what we thought. Is that in this draft? Is part of what each one of us had responded to? Is it inside of this, or is this something?
So as superintendent, I had direction from the board to go ahead and ask questions of board members, get responses from board members. That information was used to form this letter.
Okay.
So for confirmation for the board, your response is due 15 days from the 7th when the recommendations were presented. That would be this Friday, April 22nd.
So we'll start with the section 1, the recommendations. Is that where you want to start, or do you want to start with the first paragraph? Dear Ms. Barlow, this letter is the Fairfax
I'm
School
sorry,
District.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think it would be respectful. I know that it says Dear Miss Barlow, but I think she has worked very hard to get her PhD. So if we could refer to her as Dr. Barlow, I think that would be respectful.
Dr. Barlow, this letter is the Fairfax School District Board of Trustees' response to the Kern County Superintendent of Schools recommendations to the district based on the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team Extraordinary Audit Report dated March 31st, 2022. The recommendations were presented to the board on April 7th, 2022. The FICMAT audit was conducted pursuant to Education Code Section 1241.5. This section requires the superintendent of schools to report the audit findings and the superintendent of schools recommendations to the board within 45 days of completion of the audit report. Subsequently, the board is required to provide its response to the superintendent of schools recommendations no later than 15 calendar days after the board's receipt of the audit report. I'll stop there if there are any corrections or changes. All right, Section 1, Superintendent of Schools recommendations. The superintendent of schools made 3 recommendations. Each recommendation, the board's response in accordance with Section 1241.5 is below. Recommendation 1, take all steps necessary to ensure that your actions conform to the law, policy, and bylaws regarding purchasing and contracting, hiring contractors and consultants, and expending public funds, as well as the laws regarding public meetings. Board response. The board is committed to compliance and applicable law and policy in its procurement and contracting practices and its expenditure of public funds. In response to this recommendation, the district has taken various actions to strengthen applicable policies and procedures. For example, the district has reorganized the leadership of the business department to promote more centralized management and oversight of business functions. The district has also already hired additional business department staff in order to ensure greater checks and balances in the contracting and accounts payable functions. We're going to go on to recommendation number 2. Follow the recommendation made by the Kern County Grand Jury that all board members receive training in the Brown Act, Ethics and Conflicts of Interest. Board response. The board has taken significant steps in response to the grand jury's recommendation is committed to doing more. The board has been provided with Brown Act conflicts and ethics training. For example, on January 23rd, 2022, the law firm of Lozano Smith presented on the Brown Act, and the board plans to schedule another session with the firm on conflicts of interest and ethics. On January 26, 2022, board members attended a school's legal workshop on Brown Act, conflicts of interest and ethics. The board continues to explore additional opportunities to expand its understanding of these important governance laws and best practices.
Okay. I don't know how far I can go with this, but if I remember correctly, we were given a packet. We didn't necessarily discuss or go over the particular packet as we were supposed to. If anything, we were discussing the censure items and going over that. We never even really went over this particular packet that we were supposed to go over with Lozano Smith. We never had it was on the agenda, but it didn't happen.
We had a training with Lozano and Smith that you weren't available to attend, and we did go over.
Because it was a time that we rescheduled. Okay.
Yes, we did go.
Thank
over
you
that.
for the correction.
Recommendation number 3, follow the grand jury's recommendation that you verify that all board members are current residents within the district so that the people who you represent can have confidence that the board's actions are taken by those who hold office lawfully and in the public's interest. Board response. The board acknowledges the importance of board member compliance with the California residency requirements for holding public office. At the direction of the board, the district has consulted with legal counsel regarding these residency requirements, duties and options related to verifying compliance, and the options available to the district to address potential violations.
Has it been addressed? Have all board members shown proof of residency?
I think superintendent requested, and we all provided documentation at the time she requested. And so if you're requesting or you're wondering if there has been any more documentation since that time, I think that's a question. But at the time the grand jury made the recommendation, she did request of us our personal information. So if you're asking if we should do that again, then I think that's the question. But we did go over the address verification at that time.
So as superintendent, I did ask to be provided for all addresses. I do have addresses for all of the board members. I believe that section says that we will work with counsel because they're, and I'll let counsel kind of speak for himself about the legalities of verifying addresses.
Yeah, so from my perspective, it's not necessarily clear what it means here by verification. As elected officials, board members have an individual obligation to provide, for example, residency information for filing for office. I think when completing the annual Form 700, there is no particular statute or law that requires that information to be submitted to the district. And there is no particular statute or law that requires the board to, or the district to verify residency. Where residency can become an issue, obviously, is if there's a question about residency because members or elected officials must be residents of the jurisdiction throughout the term of office. And failure to maintain that residency can create a vacancy in the office. And there are various ways to address whether or not there's a vacancy. But there is not a particular mechanism to verify and residence. And under the law, residency is a fairly complex legal analysis that both involves one's physical location and residency, but also their intent about maintaining a particular place of residency. So that's why, on my advice to the superintendent, this issue was worded in the way it's worded.
Section 2, additional board comments and responses. The foregoing items address the specific recommendations made by the superintendent of schools, which is what is required in this response under applicable law. However, the board is fully committed to complying with the law, implementing best practices, and otherwise taking steps necessary and appropriate to improve its and the district's operations. As a result, the board below also addresses actions and steps taken to address the other grand jury recommendations from its May 27th, 2021 report. Grand jury recommendation number 1. The board should organize a retreat to provide extensive training and hire a conflict resolution specialist to build communication skills, hopefully building trust among board members. These team building activities should be completed before October 1st, 2021. Board response: the board is continuing to work to arrange a board retreat on or before September 1st.
September 1st of what year? Can that be clear?
Yes, we-
2022, I believe, is what you
yes.
intended.
So can we add that to that, Mr. Clark?
Also, the bylaw requires for the board to do a board evaluation each year. So I think that should be added to that board response, is that we also will make a date for board evaluations.
Excuse me?
I'm not following either.
Yes.
Okay, there's a bylaw. Our bylaw states that we would have a board evaluation.
Can you mention which board bylaw that is?
I don't have it in front of me, but I can get it to you. It's with the same bylaw that we should do our attorney evaluations. It's all there on that same bylaw. It's the attorney evaluations, RFP. And so it's on the same one. I don't know, Mr. Sims, if you know exactly which one. I talked to.
I do not.
Okay, am I wrong
So-
or isn't that what was removed from the original recommendation, or maybe I'm confused? I'm extremely.
Actually, what we did, we took the grand jury recommendations, and the grand jury recommendation specifically says the board should organize a retreat to provide extensive training and hire a conflict resolution specialist to build communication skills, hopefully building trust among board members. These team building activities should be completed before October 1st, 2021. So that's the specific recommendation, and that's what was responded to.
Grand jury recommendation number 2. The board should consult schools legal regarding the Brown Act, ethics training, and conflicts of interest. All board members must be retrained on proper behavior and subsequent actions as a board member by October 1st, 2021. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. The board continues to explore additional opportunities to expand its understandings of these important governance laws and best practices. Grand jury recommendation number 3. By September 1st, 2021, the board should review, follow, and/or update all current board bylaws and conduct board meetings using Robert Rules of Order, allowing for complete discussion before a vote is taken. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. The board has reorganized its agenda by providing a summary for the public on every agenda item to better inform discussion. The board is in an ongoing process of updating its policies to be current with CSBA model policies and regulations. A copy of Robert's rules has been provided to each board member, and the board has been provided with supplementary parliamentary procedure information. Grand jury recommendation number 4. The board should immediately work on methods for conducting meetings that allow for easier public access. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. In response to this concern, the board relocated its meeting to a larger location to allow for greater public access. In addition to accommodating larger crowds for board meetings, the board continues to stream its meetings through Zoom to enable virtual public participation. Furthermore, the board will continue to identify and appropriately address potential barriers impeding the public's access to fully participate in meetings. Grand jury recommendation number 5, starting immediately, the public should be allowed adequate time to express their concerns in open session at all board meetings and be respectfully addressed by the board. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. The board moved its meetings to a larger location. The board continues to provide access by Zoom. Members of the public who are unable to attend in person can have statements read at the meeting online. Grand jury recommendation number 6. In accordance with the California Election Code, the board should verify that board members are current residents within district boundaries before the next board meeting. Board response: see response to Superintendent of Schools recommendation above. Grand jury recommendation number 7. By September 1st, 2021, the board should complete the process and close the complaints against the board member. Board response: the board has adopted a censure of the board member. The district has placed restrictions on the board member's access to district sites. The district is also working with legal counsel to evaluate any additional appropriate actions. Grant-
I'm sorry, before you go on, I want to answer to Victoria. That board self-evaluation is bylaw 9400. It's under 9005. The board may be evaluated as a whole. Individual board members also encouraged to use the evaluation process as an opportunity to privately assess their own personal performances, and it just goes on. So I just want to address that. It's in bylaw 9400. So there's more to its entirety, but I just want to
Okay, thank you.
put that there.
I think we should proceed.
Grand jury recommendation board number 8. The board should immediately ensure that all board members' contact information is readily available to the public. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. Board member email addresses and telephone numbers are posted on the district's website. Grand jury recommendation number 9. The board should immediately cease and desist bullying during meetings, allow for discussions and questions prior to the vote, and stop the practice of forcing members to vote without having complete information. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. The board has reorganized its agenda by providing a summary for the public on every agenda item to better inform discussion. The board has also received training on the Brown Act and best governance practices. Additionally, the board president has received training on effectively conducting board meetings. The board will also continue to pursue additional training in this area. Grand jury recommendation number 10. The board should examine the funds spent on legal services, justify the need for multiple law firms, and report their findings to the public on or before the regular board meeting on August 2021. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. At its regular meeting on July 8th, 2021, the board received a presentation of district funds expended on legal fees for the 2021 fiscal year. Grand jury recommendation number 11. By June 30, 2021, the board should hold a town hall meeting where public concerns can be addressed. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. The board held a town hall meeting on June 4th, 2021. Grand jury recommendation number 12. The board should remove the current president of the board and train another board member to become president by June 30th, 2021. This will eliminate a major contributor to the dysfunction of the board. Board response: the board has implemented this recommendation. As of July 8, 2021, the prior board member was removed from executive office, thereby giving another member of the board an opportunity to serve as president. Section 3, conclusion. The board is fully committed to adhering to principles of good governance and complying all applicable laws related to board governance. The board and district administration will continue to evaluate all relevant processes and procedures to improve internal operations regarding procurement and payment for services as well. Finally, the board believes that it is incumbent for Member Mullen to resign from the board in order to fully address the issues raised in the grand jury and FICMAT reports, and hereby requests that he immediately do so in the best interest of the district, its students, employees, and community. Moreover, if it is determined that Member Mullen had a conflict of interest with respect to the procurement of legal services or reimbursement for campaign signs, the board requests that Member Mullen reimburse the district for such expenditures. If you should have any questions or concerns regarding the board's response to your recommendations, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Regina Green, Superintendent, Fairfax School District.
Is there any comment or questions, or the board like to approve it? Can we approve it?
Council, since we have you here, can we, do we need to do a roll call vote in order to approve this letter going forth to Dr. Barlow?
Yeah. The letter would need to be approved by the board. So if there's a motion can be made, and there can be a second in discussion. If the board desires further discussion, but ultimately the board will need to make a vote.
Now, I have a question on, I was rather stunned at this. Wish I could have read it before. In Mrs. Green's, next to the bottom paragraph, says if it is determined that Member Mullen had a conflict of interest, I'm talking about that sentence, with respect to the procurement of legal services or reimbursement for campaign signs, the board requests that Member Mullen reimburse the district for such expenditures. So I see the word if. So do we need to do something with if? Make it so or not so?
So the board can certainly request that the member reimburse regardless. But there's no legal obligation to reimburse any funds if there's not a specific finding of criminality or other wrongdoing, such as an appropriate conflict of interest.
Okay, so that's what the district attorney would determine. Is that correct?
That could be determined through the efforts of the district attorney.
Okay.
Or it could be determined through legal action. But there would need to be some form of determination for a member to have an obligation to reimburse any funds, if at all.
As I remember, when the issue came about regarding the signs, we all bought our own signs, and I received a call from members of the community telling me that my signs were being picked up by MOT staff from the Fairfax School District without my permission. Once I came to where the signs were at, my signs were damaged and thrown on the ground. Immediately, I talked to the superintendent regarding the issue. He's seen the signs. He let me know that he had spoke with legal counsel, that it was placed on the agenda, and it was somewhere like around $1,400. I abstained from the vote. It was it was a 4-1 with an abstention. At the time, it was Javier Moreno as the president, Victoria Cornell as the clerk, and then we had Alma Rios and Virginia Lawson as members. So if there was any question regarding the legality, I think we should have known prior to this finding, because I don't think I would have said to go forth with paying me if it was a violation of public funds. I would have taken a different option regarding being reimbursed. Some of my signs are still located on Fairfax
Mr.
Junior
Mullen?
High's
Mr. Mullen?
campus. So
Mr.
if
Mullen?
so, I would like to get those back and reimburse the district for
Mr.
my
Mullen,
sign. Yeah,
we can discuss it.
well, if we're talking about reimbursement, this is why I would consider reimbursing.
Yes, the present issue is not whether or not there was legality or whether illegality or whether there's an obligation. I think the present issue for the board is whether the board wants to leave this statement in the letter or modify the statement in some way.
Okay, well, I'd like to put a motion on the floor to approve the letter as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Cornell?
Aye.
Mullen?
No,
Lawson?
No.
Tapia?
Aye.
And what are you? Aye.
Okay, so being that there's no revisions, we'll go ahead and take draft off and we'll forward this letter on to Dr. Barlow.
Yeah, there were a couple of minor revisions, like the initial reference to Dr. Barlow. Yeah, the date, and then the adding of the 2020. And then I noted as we went through a word or two of the missing here and there. So we'll make those non-substantive changes and finalize it.
Okay, and I think, I believe Mr. Clark probably got most of those down for us, so it should be relatively quickly.
I'll send you my notes.
Discussion, potential recommendation of delegation of vacancy of board. Trustee Palmer Mullen.
Mr. Sims, I think I'll let you go ahead and kind of address this. This is something that was brought up at last board meeting that we addressed about attendance.
Yeah. So there was a request at the last board meeting to bring to this meeting an item to discuss the potential vacancy in trustee Palmer Mullen's seat as a result of his missed meetings and related issues. So the item was prepared tonight for discussion only. I can sort of give a brief overview of the law of vacancies and how they're created and on this issue, what the board's options are and potentially addressing it to inform the board's discussion. California Government Code provides that a vacancy can be created in a public official's office in a number of ways, and specifically Government Code section 1770. And there are probably 10, 15 different bases for creating a vacancy. One of those bases is where the official ceases to perform the duties of the office for 3 consecutive months. And that's what this says, 3 consecutive months. If it occurs, the office is deemed vacant under section 171770. There are other provisions that require the board, whether it is a vacancy in office with some exceptions, to either appoint or assistant to the vacant office or call an election to fill that office. Whether you appoint or call an election can vary depending on how close it is to an upcoming election, whether or not that office is up for election. The basic rule is either appoint or call a special election to fill it. But the essential issue is whether or not there is in fact a vacancy. Sometimes it's really easy to determine if there is a vacancy and there's no dispute. One example of that is where you have an office holder who resigns their position. So school districts, a board that's resigning, submit their resignation to the district and to the county superintendent of schools. And it can have a deferred resignation date or it can be immediate. You receive that, and we know now that they resigned their office, and under section 1770 of vacancy that we now look to fill pursuant to applicable law. Another situation where we have certainty that there's a vacancy is, for example, the office holder. Then there's some others where it can be certain as well. In this particular case, the issue that was raised was concerning trustee member Mullins' absences from various board meetings and whether or not that created a vacancy. The issue is whether that creates a vacancy under 1770 subdivision G, which is this ceasing to perform for 3 consecutive months. My understanding is that trustee Mullen did not attend the regular meeting in January. He did participate in a special meeting we had on the Brown Act on January 23rd. He missed the February and March meetings that appeared at the end of the April 7th meeting. So the fundamental question is whether or not that chain of events and perhaps some other information satisfies the requirement that the office holder cease to perform the duties of office for 3 consecutive months. I can tell you there's not a lot of case on this, either with California courts or opinions from the California Attorney General. I can tell you also that this inquiry is pretty fact specific. And what the courts and the Attorney General look at in part is whether or not there was an abandonment of the office. And sometimes the intent of the individual can go into that. Other statements they made, their conduct engaged in, that will inform the decision maker on whether or not there's been an abandonment of the office. The district believes that an office is vacant. It has a couple of options. address that. There is some case law that supports the notion the board can simply adopt a resolution after notice to the office holder, and an opportunity for that officer to be heard, adopt a resolution declaring the office vacant. And then attempting to fill that vacant office pursuant to statute by appointment or through election. However, that's not a court order, it's action of the board, so that can be challenged either by the member or perhaps a member of the public who doesn't agree that that was an appropriate action or that the act that the office was vacant. Another option available to the district and to members of the public is to seek what's called a rental action. And for those taking notes, it's QUO space WARRANTO. And what this is essentially the law provides where there's a question about the validity of someone's claim to office. Again, the district or private party can file an application to the California Attorney General to request permission to sue the office holder, to have a court determine whether they are validly holding their office. What the process looks like is an application is prepared. It's called points and authority. So it's your legal authorities, it's your law and the facts that support this request to the Attorney General. Those documents need to be served on the office holder and provided to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, the office holder, then has a certain period of time to respond to that complaint and submit that response to the person seeking the action and to the Attorney General. Then the person or entity seeking the action has the opportunity to apply. All that information is then considered and evaluated by the Attorney General, and the Attorney General will decide on two things essentially. That there's a significant enough question regarding whether or not that individual is validly holding the office to permit a lawsuit for the court to determine. And if the Attorney General says yes, it's a significant enough question, the suit will be granted, and then you would file that action in the local superior court, and it would go through the procedures to have a court determine whether or not there's a vacancy in existence. If the Attorney General decided no, there's not a significant question, the leave to sue would be denied, and you would not be allowed to file the lawsuit
Deem not appropriate or